John Ochuko stepped carefully through the tall iron gates of an elite Nigerian university. The campus stretched far and wide, with shiny buildings reflecting the bright Nigerian sun. He saw luxury cars parked in neat rows, students dressed in designer clothes laughing and chatting. John's heart pounded loudly in his chest. He came from a small, poor neighborhood in Warri, and everything here felt like a different world, a world he didn't belong to. His clothes were old and worn, his shoes scuffed, and he knew many would judge him instantly. John swallowed hard and tried to stand tall. He told himself he had to hide the truth about his family if he wanted to survive here. They must not know he was an orphan, all alone in this world. So, he borrowed expensive clothes from a cousin he barely knew, practiced confident smiles, and made up stories about his father's business. Every word he spoke was a lie, but John thought it was the only way to fit in and chase his dreams. On the second day of classes, John's life changed forever when he met Angela. She was nothing like the other rich kids who bragged loudly about their wealth. Angela had a calm confidence that drew people to her. Her dark eyes sparkled with kindness, and her laughter was warm and genuine. Angela came from one of the city's most famous families, and everyone respected her, not just for her money, but for who she was. John felt an instant connection, but also fear. How could a girl like Angela ever care about someone like him? Still, when she smiled at him and asked about his studies, John felt a hope he hadn't known before. Angela enjoyed talking to him because he listened well and didn't act like he was better than anyone else. But John was terrified that one day the truth about his life would come out and destroy whatever they had. John's first lie was small, but heavy on his heart. He told Angela his father was a wealthy businessman with many companies. But in reality, his father abandoned his mother when she got pregnant and died 10 years after. When Angela smiled and said she admired his family's success, John felt a strange mix of pride and guilt. To keep the lie believable, John started buying small gifts, books, phone cases, snacks, things he could barely afford but hoped would impress Angela. At night, John would lie awake, worrying about when the truth would catch up to him. Every lie built a wall between him and the real John, but he felt stuck. If he told Angela the truth, would she still want to be with him? Would the others laugh at him, or worse? A week later, John received an invitation to a party at Angela's family mansion. His stomach twisted with nerves and excitement. This was his chance to show he belonged. He borrowed a nice suit and polished his shoes, trying hard not to look like the poor boy he really was. At the party, the mansion glowed with bright lights, and music filled the air. Students danced and drank expensive drinks. John felt out of place, but smiled as Angela introduced him to her friends and family. For a few hours, he lived the dream of being part of this world, laughing and talking with the best students. But when he looked in the mirror later that night, he saw a stranger staring back. The web of lies grew tighter every day. John told everyone his family was wealthy. He spent money he didn't have on clothes, meals, and small luxuries, borrowing from friends and even taking small loans. The more he lied, the harder it became to keep up. His roommate, Emeka, warned him one evening, "John, this can't last. People will find out. When they do, it will hurt more than now." John nodded, but didn't want to hear it. He was too afraid to stop pretending. It was easier said than done. Sly was a dangerous figure on campus, a leader of a small gang known for cheating, betting, and bullying. He was also known for blackmail. One day, Sly cornered John and threatened to expose his secret unless John helped him cheat in exams. Fear filled John's heart. He couldn't bear the shame of being exposed as a liar. Reluctantly, John agreed to help Sly, hoping it was only temporary. But every time he helped, the guilt burned deeper. He felt trapped in a life that was no longer his own. Angela noticed the change in John. He seemed distracted.
Quieter.
One afternoon, she confronted him gently. "John, are you hiding something from me?" John's heart froze. He almost told the truth, but swallowed the words. "Nothing," he lied quickly, forcing a smile. Angela looked disappointed, but didn't push. Her silence was louder than any accusation, and it hurt John more than he expected. The weight of lies crushed John's spirit. His grades began to fall, and he found it harder to focus. One night, sitting alone in his small room, he finally broke down and cried. He longed for honesty, but feared losing the life he had built on lies. When Angela texted him, saying she missed the old John, something inside him shifted. He knew he had to be brave. The next day, he would tell her everything. Under the shade of a big mango tree on campus, John took a shaky breath and told Angela he was broke and had to work for Sly to make money. But he couldn't bring himself to tell her he was really poor. He promised to make things right and expected his family to send him money soon. But he knew that was not true. Angela listened quietly, her face unreadable. Then she said softly, "John, I liked you before any of the lies. I want to believe in the real you." John felt tears sting his eyes. Why couldn't he trust her enough to tell her the whole truth? He feared rejection. The news spread quickly. Rumors swirled through the campus like wildfire. Some students laughed at John. Others whispered behind his back. Angela's family was furious, warning her to stay away from the campus cheat. She didn't know how they heard about John. John faced humiliation and isolation and wondered who leaked his secret. He knew it would have been worse if they knew how poor he really was. At the right time, he would tell Angela about his poor background. Determined to rebuild his life, John joined a student club focused on community service. He found friends who valued honesty and hard work. Angela gave him a second chance as a friend, and together they started a scholarship program for poor students like him. For the first time, John felt hope, real hope for his future. John tried to focus on moving forward. With some of the truth now out in the open, at least between him and Angela, he thought the worst was behind him. He spent his days attending lectures, studying hard, and volunteering in the campus mentorship program. For a moment, life felt manageable, even hopeful, but things beneath the surface were beginning to unravel. Angela's father was starting to see John in a new light. Sly, the cunning gang leader John had once helped with exam cheats, wasn't done with him. Word had gotten around that John had cut ties with Sly's group, and some of the boys took that as betrayal. One evening, John returned to his room to find his door slightly ajar. His heart dropped. His laptop was gone, along with some of his textbooks and the small savings he had hidden in an envelope. Later that night, an anonymous text arrived. "Don't act like you're better than us. You'll regret it." John knew exactly who had sent it. He reported the incident to the school security office, but they offered little help without proof. Still, he refused to back down. He had lied long enough. He wasn't going to let fear rule him again. Meanwhile, Angela had started noticing inconsistencies in John's past stories. His casual mentions of traveling abroad, his supposed family mansion in Lekki, and other fabrications began to sound hollow. Though John had told her some truths recently, there were still gaps, missing pieces that tugged at her curiosity. Something didn't add up, and the more she thought about it, the more determined she became to find out the full story. Angela decided to dig deeper. She didn't know what she would find, but deep down, part of her feared the answer would break her heart. Angela couldn't shake off the feeling. The pieces no longer fit together, and John's stories began to sound more like fairy tales than facts. Her curiosity turned into obsession. She spoke to a lecturer who confirmed John was one of the best performing scholarship students from Warri. The final blow came when she visited the bursary office under the pretense of verifying her own fees and casually asked about John's payment history. What she saw confirmed her worst fears. John hadn't paid any premium tuition. He was on a full academic scholarship. Heartbroken and furious, she confronted him after class. They stood behind the faculty building, away from curious eyes. "Why did you lie to me?" Her voice trembled with anger and betrayal. John froze, his face draining of color. "Angela, I didn't mean to hurt you," he stammered. "I just wanted to fit in. You wouldn't have looked at me if I told you the truth." Her eyes welled with tears. "Maybe not at first, but I would have respected you more than I do now." She turned and walked away, leaving John standing in the shadow of his collapsing world. Word spread like wildfire. Someone, likely one of Angela's close friends, leaked the confrontation. Suddenly, John was no longer the mysterious rich kid, but the poor boy who had conned the entire elite student body. The same people who once praised his quiet sophistication now mocked him. Memes flew across social media. Old photos of him in simple clothes, side by side with his fake designer looks, labeled majestic fraud. Angela didn't return his calls or texts. Emeka tried to console him, but John barely spoke. He stopped attending parties, lectures, and even meals. The shame was too much. What hurt more than the mockery was losing Angela, not because of who he was, but because of who he pretended to be. He had built a palace of lies, and now the roof had fallen in. Alone in his room, he stared at the ceiling, wondering if there was any way to rebuild from the ruins. As if emotional ruin wasn't enough, financial trouble knocked on his door next. Sly, no longer friendly, came calling. "You owe me," he said coldly, slamming a stack of betting records on John's table. "You stopped working. You broke the deal. Now I'm short by hundreds of thousands." John tried to explain, but Sly wasn't interested. "You either pay me back or work it off. And trust me, you won't like the kind of work I'll need from you." John's stomach twisted in fear. He knew Sly's operations went deeper than campus gossip, fraud, fake ID networks, even rumored ties to cultists. The thought of being dragged into that world was terrifying. But what choice did he have? His pride had already cost him everything. Now, he risked his safety and future. He reached out to Emeka that night. "I messed up. Badly." Emeka didn't say much, but his silent presence was the only comfort John had left. The fall had been steep, but rock bottom was still below. The next morning, Emeka handed John a contact. Talk to her. She runs a student-led tech startup that needs developers and marketers. It's not glamorous, but it pays, and it's legal. John hesitated. Why are you helping me? Emeka looked him in the eye. Because you're still my guy, and everyone deserves a shot at fixing their mess, if they want it. Swallowing his pride, John reached out to the contact, a no-nonsense final-year student named Tenny. She interviewed him over jollof rice and zobo at the student canteen. After hearing his pitch and reviewing his academic track record, she nodded. You'll start small social media, logistics if you're happy with that. We don't pay much, but we don't play games either. You in? John agreed without hesitation. It felt good honest to finally build something real. And for the first time in weeks, he slept without guilt. John threw himself into the new job. He was learning fast, and his team began to respect his work ethic and creativity. He designed a marketing strategy that significantly boosted engagement, earning him a small bonus. The startup buzzed with energy, and though his heart still ached from Angela's absence, he was finding his feet again. People who had mocked him before now watched from a distance, some even offering tentative nods of respect. But just as he was gaining momentum, Sly reappeared this time, not with threats, but with an offer. I've got a gig, big payout. You do this, your debt's cleared, and you walk free. Say no, and we go back to our previous arrangement, only worse. John stared at the envelope in Sly's hand. It was filled with instructions, fake documents, a delivery, a signature. He felt the old fear return, but also something new. Resolve. This time, he wasn't the same desperate boy trying to fit in. He had something to lose now: his future, his peace, maybe even a second chance with Angela. The decision he made next would shape everything that followed. John spent the night pacing, staring at the envelope on his desk. The walls of his room seemed to close in, reminding him of every mistake he had made. But now, he had a choice. He could return to the world of lies, or he could risk everything to protect the fragile new life he had begun to build. In the morning, he made his decision. He picked up the envelope, walked straight to the student security office, and asked to speak to someone in confidence. The officer he met, Sergeant Bassi, was skeptical at first. But once John laid everything bare, providing names, receipts, and even voice notes from Sly, the mood changed. Bassi leaned forward. You're either very brave or very foolish, but you might just be the key to bringing this guy down. John was asked to cooperate in a sting operation. It was dangerous. One wrong move, and Sly could retaliate. But John nodded. I want out. Not just for me, but for everyone he's blackmailing. The plan was simple, but risky. John would go through with the delivery under watch and signal once the handoff was complete. Officers would be nearby, waiting to pounce. On the day of the sting, John wore a wire, heart pounding so loud he could barely hear the instructions in his ear. He met Sly's contact at an abandoned hostel complex. The man looked shady, impatient. Where's the stuff? He barked. John handed over the documents and signed the fake ledger as rehearsed. As soon as the exchange was done, John gave the signal. He rubbed his left arm twice. Within seconds, plainclothes officers swarmed the area. Sly's contact tried to flee, but was tackled to the ground. The operation was a success. Back at the station, Sly was arrested that same evening. John watched the news that night as the story broke. Campus criminal syndicate busted through student tip-off. His heart pounded with relief and fear. He had done it, but would Angela ever forgive him? The morning after the sting, campus was buzzing. Everyone had seen the headlines. Whispers followed John wherever he went, not with scorn this time, but with awe and curiosity. Even lecturers looked at him with a newfound respect. For the first time in months, he walked through the university gates with his head held high. But despite the public applause, John felt a gnawing emptiness. He still hadn't spoken to Angela. Angela had seen the news too. Her friends sent her links. Her phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Deep inside, she was proud of him. Proud that he had turned things around. Proud that he had helped bring down a dangerous criminal. But pride didn't erase the pain. She still remembered the betrayal. One afternoon, she found herself walking toward the computer lab, where she heard John was working. She paused outside the door, her heart pounding. Should she talk to him? John was working on a school project in the computer lab when he felt someone walk in. He looked up, and it was Angela. She stood by the door, looking unsure, but her eyes were fixed on him. For a few seconds, they just stared at each other without saying anything. Then, slowly, Angela walked into the room. "I saw what happened on the news," she said quietly. Her arms were crossed, and her voice was calm but serious. "You were brave." John stood up, unsure whether to move closer or stay where he was. "Thank you," he said. "I didn't do it to impress anyone. I just couldn't keep lying." Angela nodded. "That's why I'm here." There was a long pause between them. Not an awkward one, but one filled with emotion. They both thought about everything that had happened, the lies, the heartbreak, and the truth finally coming out. "I was really hurt," Angela said, her voice shaking a little. "Not because you're poor, but because you didn't believe I could love the real you." John's eyes became wet. "I didn't think I was good enough for someone like you, so I pretended to be someone I thought you would like." Angela took a deep breath. "You didn't have to pretend. I liked how you listened, how kind you were. The quiet confidence, that's what made me fall for you. Not the clothes, not the fake background." John took a small step forward. "I know I messed everything up. I'm not asking for forgiveness today. I just wanted you to know I'm trying to change. For real this time." Angela looked at him quietly, then gave a small, soft smile. "Do you want to go for a walk?" John blinked in surprise, then smiled back. "Yes, I'd like that." They walked out of the computer lab together, side by side. There were no promises, no pressure, just honesty between them for the first time. And maybe, just maybe, this could be the start of something real. John and Angela walked quietly through the school gardens. The evening breeze was soft, and the sky was painted with orange and pink. For the first time in a long while, John felt peaceful. He didn't need to pretend. He was just himself. "I never thought we'd speak again," John said softly. Angela looked at him and smiled. "I didn't think so either. But sometimes people deserve a second chance if they're honest." John nodded. "I want to be honest now. No more lies." They sat on a bench near the small fountain. Students passed by, some whispering and pointing at them. Everyone had seen the news about John's past, his lies, and how he helped expose Sly and the betting gang. But at that moment, John didn't care what people thought. Angela turned to him. "So what happens now?" "I don't know," John said. but I want to start over as the real me." Angela looked into his eyes. "Then let's start as friends. Take things slow. I need time." John smiled. "That's more than I could hope for." Their hands brushed slightly on the bench. Neither of them moved away. They didn't need to rush anything. What mattered now was that the truth was finally between them, and so was respect. As they drove back to the hostel area in Angela's car, John felt lighter. He had faced the truth, lost almost everything, and yet he was still standing. And even though things weren't perfect, he was no longer hiding. And that felt like true freedom. Word spread quickly around the university. Everyone knew the truth about John now that he wasn't rich, that he had lied, and that he had helped bring down Sly's betting gang. Some students called him brave. Others still judged him. But John didn't hide anymore. When he walked through campus, he kept his head high. Some people whispered, some laughed, but a few came up to him quietly and said, "You inspired me," or "Thank you for standing up to Sly." Those words meant everything to him. In class, things were different too. Angela now sat beside him again, just like before. They didn't act like a couple. They were just friends for now, but it felt real. And John knew, deep inside, that real was better than perfect. One day after class, his lecturer called him aside. "I saw what you did," she said. "It takes courage to admit your mistakes. I've submitted your name for a student leadership program. You'll be working with a local tech company." John was shocked. "Me?" "Yes, you. Not because of your past, but because of your growth." For the first time in a long while, John felt proud of himself. Not because of a lie, but because of the truth. John started the student leadership program the following week. He was assigned to a tech company in town called Green Code Solutions. It wasn't one of those big flashy companies, but it was run by passionate young Nigerians who wanted to create real change. His supervisor, Mr. Tunde, was impressed with John's creativity and ideas. "You've got something special," he said. "You just need the right place to grow." John worked hard. He asked questions, stayed late, and even offered to help design a small app for a charity group. Slowly, his confidence returned, not the fake confidence from before, but the real kind that comes from doing something meaningful. Meanwhile, Angela was also growing in her own way. She joined a student legal aid group and started helping students in trouble, especially those who couldn't afford lawyers or support. One evening, she called John. "Guess what?" she said excitedly. "We're going to a local school tomorrow to teach girls about their rights. Want to come with me?" John smiled. "I'd love to." They were rebuilding their friendship, and even though things were still delicate between them, John knew one thing this time: it was built on truth. As they walked together to the outreach event the next day, John looked at Angela and felt something deep inside hope. Maybe life had taken him through lies and loss to lead him to something better, a second chance. John and Angela arrived at the girls' school early the next morning. The small classrooms were filled with excited students. John gave a short speech about believing in yourself, even when life is hard. Angela spoke about women's rights and the importance of education. The students clapped loudly. It felt good to make a difference. After the event, the school principal, a woman in her late 50s named Madam Oma, came to thank them. She looked closely at John and said, "You remind me of someone I used to know. What's your full name, young man?" John Ochuko, he replied with a polite smile. Madame Oma's face changed. Her smile faded. Ochuko, she whispered, her eyes now serious. Where are you from? Warri, ma, he said, now a little confused. She looked shocked. Was your mother's name Tina? John blinked. Yes. How do you know that? Angela stepped closer, sensing something big was happening. Madame Oma sat down slowly on a bench and said, Tina was my younger sister. You're my late sister's son. That makes me your aunt. John felt the ground shift under him. What? That's impossible. My mum never told me. She thought I abandoned her when she got pregnant, Madame Oma said quietly. But I didn't. Our family separated us. I looked for her for years. I'd give anything to see her again. And now, here you are, my nephew. Angela stared at them in shock. Wait, so John, you're not alone after all. John didn't know whether to cry or laugh. After all the lies, loss, and struggle, he had just found family. And maybe, just maybe, a future that was brighter than he ever imagined. John sat under a tree behind the school, staring into space. His mind was racing. An aunt? After all these years? He had believed his mother had no family left. She had never mentioned a sister. All his life, he had felt like he didn't belong. But now, this woman, Madame Oma, said she was blood. Angela sat beside him, gently holding his hand. Are you okay? She asked softly. I don't know, John said. I've spent my whole life thinking I was on my own. Now I find out I have an aunt. And she works with schools. She's educated, powerful. Angela smiled. Maybe this is your blessing in disguise. A few minutes later, Madame Oma joined them. I know this is a lot, John, she said, but I'd like to get to know you better. I tried to find your mother, but by the time I tracked down her village, they said she had moved away. We were both victims of misunderstanding and silence. John looked at her, still unsure. Why didn't you fight harder to find her? I did. I even came to Warri once, years ago, but no one knew where she'd gone. I'm sorry, truly. After a moment, John stood and offered a handshake. Maybe we can start again. She pulled him into a hug. Yes, we can. Angela watched with tears in her eyes. It was a moment of healing, one John didn't know he needed. Later that night, Madame Oma called again. There's something else, she said. I want to sponsor you. You won't have to struggle anymore. You've worked hard. You deserve a real chance. John's eyes widened. Are you serious? I am. And if your mother were here, she would want this too. John looked at Angela. So much had changed in just one day, but for the first time, his past wasn't something to hide. It was leading him toward a future full of hope. John's life began to change quickly. With Madame Oma's help, he no longer had to worry about money. She paid off his school fees, gave him a monthly allowance, and even helped him find a better place to live. John was shocked by the kindness. For the first time, he had support, and he could finally breathe. But he didn't waste the opportunity. He still worked hard at the tech company. He still studied late into the night, and he still volunteered with Angela at the outreach program. He was determined to make his second chance count. Angela noticed the change in him. You seem different, she said one day as they walked back from class. I feel different, John replied. For the first time, I'm not pretending, and I'm not ashamed of where I came from. Angela smiled. That's the John I liked in the first place." John stopped walking and looked at her. "Do you think we could try again?" Slowly this time. No lies, no pressure. Angela looked into his eyes. "I've been waiting for you to ask." She reached out and held his hand. That evening, John got a call from Mr. Tunde at Green Code. "Your charity app idea? We're building it. And I want you to lead the student team." John couldn't believe it. His voice shook as he said, "Thank you, sir." He hung up and stared at the sky. The boy who once borrowed clothes and told lies just to feel worthy was now building something real, something good, something true. And best of all, he was doing it as himself. John stood at the front of the hall, looking out at the crowd of students, professors, and tech partners gathered for the Youth Innovation Showcase. His team's app, Help Now, a platform that connected students to emergency support, counseling, and legal aid, was one of the top finalists. He took a deep breath. This moment felt like a dream. Just a few months ago, he was pretending to be someone else. Now, he was being celebrated for the real John, honest, hardworking, and full of ideas. Angela was in the front row, smiling proudly. Emeka sat beside her, clapping hard every time John spoke. Madam Oma, wearing a traditional wrapper and glasses, beamed like a proud mother. When John finished his presentation, the whole room stood and clapped. He smiled wide, not out of pride, but from gratitude. He had come a long way from the boy who borrowed shoes and skipped meals to impress people. Later that evening, Angela pulled him aside. "You've changed everything," she said. "Not just for yourself, but for others too. Your story is giving people hope." John laughed. "I'm just trying to make things right." "You already have," she whispered. As the judges announced the winning app, John's hands were shaking. Then the host shouted, "The first prize goes to Help Now, led by John Ochuko." The crowd roared. Angela hugged him tightly, and for a moment, John closed his eyes and let the applause wash over him. He wasn't rich by money, but he had everything that mattered: truth, growth, love, and a future. The boy who had lied to fit in now stood tall because he finally accepted who he was. It was a quiet Saturday evening. The school campus was calm, the sun gently setting in golden light. John stood near the old fountain where he and Angela had first sat and talked months ago back, when everything between them was new, fragile, and full of secrets. Now, everything was different. Angela arrived, wearing a simple blue dress and her hair in soft braids. She smiled when she saw him, and John's heart felt warm. "I remember this place," she said, sitting beside him. "So do I," John replied. "It's where I almost lost you." Angela looked at him. "But it's also where we started being honest." John nodded. "Angela, I know we've come a long way. I've hurt you, I've made mistakes, but I've also grown. And now, everything I do, the app, the leadership program, even how I carry myself, it's all because of what I've learned through you and from you." Angela said nothing for a moment, then reached into her bag and pulled out a small book. "What's that?" John asked. "It's my journal," she said, "and I want to read you something." She opened to a page and read aloud. "He lied to me, and yes, it broke my heart, but I still see the boy beneath the lie. The boy who listens, the boy who fights for others, the boy who wants to be better. I don't know what the future holds, but I know I'm still rooting for him." John felt tears in his eyes. "You wrote that?" Angela smiled and took his hand. "Yes. And now I don't have to root from a distance. I want to walk beside you, John. No more masks, no more fear." John smiled through the tears. "So, is this you saying yes to us?" Angela leaned in and stroked his cheek. "It's me saying yes to the truth, yes to second chances, yes to you." They stood in silence, holding hands as the sun dipped behind the campus buildings. No loud promises, no perfect ending, just two people flawed but growing, broken but healing, finally choosing each other. And this time, it was real. The end. Hope you enjoyed the story. Do check out other interesting stories on this channel. Don't forget to comment, like, share with friends, and subscribe if you haven't already to support the channel. It's free. Thanks. See you in the next one.